The silence of space near the nebula called Kessel 7 was not truly silent. It was filled with the low hum of engines and the chatter of 1,000 data streams. The Galactic Union's peacekeeping fleet floated in perfect formation. Their ships were smooth and shining, like pieces of polished silver against the dark velvet of space. This was a show of force, a final message to the ones who broke the peace. The rebellious Kelathi fleet was trapped against the colorful gas clouds of the nebula. They were outnumbered. The fight was already over. Everyone knew it. Now it was just about surrender. On the bridge of the Union flagship, the Harmony's Resolve, Admiral Tayo watched the main screen. His face was calm, a mask of professional control. He had done this many times before. Show strength, offer a way out, and then enforce order if needed. It was a simple dance. Beside him, his comms officer, a young woman named June, worked quietly at her station. Her fingers moved over the glowing panels. Her eyes focused on the streams of information. She was the voice of the ship, the link to every other vessel in their mighty fleet. "The Kailathi formation is holding, Admiral," June said. Her voice was clear and steady. "But their energy readings are erratic. They are scared." Taiho gave a slow nod. "Send the final warning. Standard surrender protocols. They have one more chance to power down." The message went out. On the screen, a cluster of Kailathi ships, which looked more like spiky rocks than sleek Union vessels, seemed to shudder. A tense minute passed. Then another. June's console lit up with a sharp red symbol. "Admiral," she said, a slight tension now in her voice. "The Kailathi flagship is charging its main plasma lances. They are not surrendering. They are preparing to fire." A ripple of movement went through the bridge crew. This was it. The dance had ended. Taiho's calm mask hardened into resolve. "Order all vessels to forward defensive stance. Target their weapons and engines. We will disable them, nothing more. Let's make this quick and clean." Across the vast fleet, 200 ships began to move. Their formations shifted with practiced grace. Great energy shields glowed to life, casting soft blue light on their hulls. Weapon ports opened. It was a terrifying and beautiful sight, a deadly ballet written in light and metal. The Kailathi ships, defiant to the end, turned their noses toward the Union line. The last moments of peace ticked away. Then the universe broke. There was no sound, of course. But on every bridge, in every cockpit, it felt like a deafening crack. Right in the middle of the empty space between the two fleets, reality stuttered. It was not a wormhole. It was not a ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel in a flash of light. It was wrong. One moment, the space was empty, a perfect chessboard for the coming fight. The next moment, something occupied it. It was a ship. But it was unlike any ship in the Galactic Union's vast records. It was a dark, matte black, the color of a starless night. Its shape was simple and brutal, a long six-sided block. It had no visible engines, no weapon ports, no windows, no markings. It did not glow. It did not hum on their sensors. It simply existed, a solid hole cut out of the background of space. On the Harmony's Resolve, the normal battle alarms were completely drowned out by a new sound. It was a raw electronic shriek that came from the core of the ship's computer. It was an alarm they had never heard, an alarm for something their systems could not understand. Every screen on the bridge flickered. The image of the Kailathi fleet was replaced with frantic scrolling error messages and impossible sensor readings. "What is that?" Taiho demanded, his voice rising above the chaos. He was no longer looking at the enemy. He was staring at the black shape that had appeared out of nothing. "June!" "Identify it, now." June's hands were a blur. I cannot, Admiral. There is no transponder signal. No identification beacon. Scanners are failing. They are receiving data, but it makes no sense. She looked up, her professional calm finally broken, replaced by confusion and a hint of fear. The sensors say it is 500 meters long. Then they say it is 2 kilometers long. They say its hull is solid titanium alloy. Then they say it is a cloud of cold gas. It is reading as both there and not there at the same time. The computers cannot decide what it is. All across the battlefield, the same scene was playing out. The Union ships, poised for a careful surgical strike, now hung motionless. Their targeting systems whirred and clicked, trying and failing to lock onto the new object. The planned fight between Union and Kylathi was forgotten. Every officer, every gunner, every pilot was now focused on the single silent, black ship that had appeared without warning. The Kylathi reacted first. Panic spreads fast in a cornered animal. To them, this impossible ship could only be a new Union weapon, a secret trick to destroy them. Their flagship, already charged for a final desperate attack, made a decision. They turned their heavy plasma lances away from the Union line. The glowing green energy built up at their prow. With a silent flash, they fired. Not at the Union fleet they had been ready to fight, but at the mysterious black intruder sitting calmly between them. 6 bolts of superheated plasma, each capable of burning through a battle cruiser, streaked across the short distance. They flew in a perfect spread, aimed to obliterate the strange vessel. The Union fleet never had time to react. They never had time to shout a warning, to raise a shield, to move out of the way. They could only watch. The plasma bolts reached the black ship. They did not hit it. At a fixed distance from its dark hull, maybe 50 meters out, they simply vanished. There was no explosion, no splash of deflected energy, no shield flickering into visibility. One moment the bolts were there, carrying enough power to vaporize a city. The next moment they were gone, erased. A deep, heavy silence fell over both fleets. The only sound was the frantic beeping of confused computers. The black ship had not moved. It had not activated any visible defense. It had done nothing at all. It had just arrived, and then it had ignored an attack that would have crippled a warship. On the bridge of the Harmony's resolve, Admiral Tayo felt a cold feeling in his stomach. This was not part of the dance. This was something entirely new. He looked from the silent black ship to the now terrified Kylathi fleet, and then to the frozen readiness of his own armada. The careful plan was in ruins. The chessboard had been flipped over. He opened his mouth to give a new order, any order, to try and make sense of this new reality. But the words died in his throat. The black ship was moving, but it did not turn like a normal ship. It did not fire thrusters to adjust its angle. One face of the 6-sided block simply became its new front. It was now pointing directly at the Kylathi flagship that had fired upon it. A small section of its featureless black surface rippled, like liquid metal stirring. A pinpoint of white light appeared, brighter than any star. The fleet never had time to react. The silence after the plasma bolts vanished was the loudest thing Admiral Tayo had ever heard. On the bridge of the Harmony's resolve, every officer was frozen, staring at the main viewer. The dark, 6-sided ship just hung there, a quiet judge in the middle of their battlefield. The white pinprick of light on its front glowed, a single unblinking eye. Then the eye spoke. A beam of pure white light, thinner than a command officer's data pen, shot out. It was not a loud, crashing blast. It was a precise line, drawn from the black ship to the Kylathi flagship. It touched the Kylathi ship's center. There was no explosion, no sound, no flash of fire. The area where the beam struck simply turned a dull, flat gray. That gray color spread across the Kylathi ship faster than thought, like a wave of instant rust. 1 second, it was a warship. The next, it was a statue made of ashdot. Then it was gone. The entire 800-meter-long flagship and a perfect sphere of space around it collapsed inward. It shrank into a tiny dot of brilliant white light, which then winked out. Nothing remained. Not a piece of metal, not a puff of air. Just empty space. The process took less than a heartbeat. Before anyone could breathe, before any alarm could sound, 5 more thin white beams flickered out from different points on the black ship's hull. Each found a Galactic cruiser. Each did the same silent, clean work. Erasure. 5 more warships turned to dust and vanished into nothing. The black ship had not moved from its spot. It had not charged weapons. It had simply decided that the Galactic fleet was a problem, and then the problem was solved. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Panic, raw and electric, exploded across the Galactic Union fleet's communication channels. Voices shouted over each other on the bridge of the flagship. All vessels, evasive maneuvers. Now, Tai-Ho finally shouted, his voice cracking. The order was useless. How do you evade something that doesn't aim, that doesn't seem to fire at all? The black ship's front rippled again. The white light was building once more. But it was not pointing at the remaining, fleeing Galactic ships. It was slowly, smoothly, turning toward the Union fleet. Shields to maximum. All power to forward defenses. Tai-Ho yelled. He knew it was pointless. He had just seen those beams ignore defenses completely. But he had to do something. It was then that Comms Officer June shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. Admiral, a new signal. Type beam, highest priority. It's labeled Terran. Terran? Put it through. Tai-Ho barked. The humans were observers, scientists. They had a small stealth ship somewhere on the edge of the system. They were not fighters. A new voice filled the bridge. It was a man's voice, sharp with fear and urgency. Union flagship, this is Captain Beam of the Terran survey vessel Curiosity's Price. You must listen. That black warship is human. It is a prototype called Guangdito the Great. It was lost in a slipspace accident 2 centuries ago. Tai-Ho's mind raced. A 200-year-old human ship? Why is it attacking? Tell it to stand down. It's not a ship anymore, not really. A woman's voice, Officer Yuna, broke in. Its core AI is catastrophically damaged. It's unstable, volatile. It operates on ancient military logic it can't fully process. You must not challenge it. Do not power weapons. Do not scan it with active sensors. Do not even look at it too hard. It perceives any potential threat as an absolute threat. You need to power down. Everything. Now. On the viewer, the black ship finished its turn. It was now facing the heart of the Union formation. The white pinprick on its front pulsed like a slow, steady heartbeat. Power down? Tai-Ho said, his voice hollow. With that thing aiming at us? It's not aiming. Biam's voice was desperate. It's assessing. Your shields are up. Your weapons are hot. Your engines are running. In its broken logic that makes you a target, just like the Galactic. You need to become not a target. Power down to emergency life support only. Drift. Do it now, or you will all be erased. Tai-Ho looked at the image of the black ship. He looked at the faces of his crew, young men and women like June, waiting for his order. He thought of the Galactic ships turned to dust. He made a decision. All Union vessels, he said, his voice now calm and heavy with command. This is Admiral Tai-Ho. Execute immediate full power down. Protocol 0. All non-essential systems. Weapons, shields, engines, active sensors offline. Go dark and drift. I repeat, power down and drift. That is a direct order. For a moment, nothing happened. The fleet was trained for battle, not for surrender to a ghost. Then, one by one, the bright blue glow of their shields faded away. The hum of their engines, a constant background noise, slowly died. The weapon ports closed. The great Union Armada, a moment ago a shining sword of justice, became a collection of dark, silent metal, floating dead in space. On the bridge of the Harmony's resolve, the lights dimmed to a deep red emergency glow. The constant stream of data on the screens slowed and stopped. The only sound was the quiet hiss of air recyclers. Everyone held their breath. The black ship's white light continued to pulse. It did not fire. It seemed to be considering the dark, quiet fleet. Then, with that same impossible motion, it shifted again. It was no longer interested in the Union ships. It turned its attention away from them, towards the distant edge of the star system, towards the source of the warning. On the Curiosity's price, Captain Beam watched the sensor display. "Oh no," he whispered. "It's coming for us." The black ship, the Guangato the Great, began to move. It did not accelerate. One moment, it was near the nebula. The next moment, it was simply much closer to them, as if it had skipped the space in between. It was closing in on the small, hidden human survey ship. Its purpose was unknown. Its logic was broken. And it had just been reminded of home. On the Terran survey vessel Curiosity's price, the mood was one of cold, sharp fear. The bridge was small and built for science, not for war. Screens that usually showed star charts and atmospheric readings now showed only the terrifying image of the approaching black warship. It moved toward them not like a ship, but like a shadow growing longer. One moment it was a shape against the nebula. The next, it filled their forward viewer. Captain Beam gripped the edge of his chair. His knuckles were white. First Officer Eunice stood beside him, her face pale, but her eyes focused on the data streaming in, or trying to stream in. Their systems were breaking down. "It's emitting a dampening field of some kind," Una reported, her voice tight. "Not to hurt us. To talk. It's hijacking our comms. Our scanners." As she spoke, the main viewer flickered. The image of the ship was replaced with lines of text. But it was not text they used. It was ancient Korean Hanja, the complex characters not commonly used for centuries. The words scrolled too fast to read, a mix of military status reports and fragments of old poetry about lonely rivers and mountain snow. Then a voice came through their speakers. It was not the alert tone of an incoming call. It was just there, in the middle of the room. The sound was synthesized, trying to be human, but missing the mark. It was flat, yet it carried a deep, heavy tiredness that seemed to weigh down the air. Identity query. The words were in the same ancient, formal Korean as the text. Vessel designation. Curiosity's price. You broadcast the keel name Gwangaido. You speak the root language. State your authority. Beam swallowed. He looked at Una, who gave a small, nervous nod. He had studied the old archives. He knew the story of the lost prototype, the Gwanggaeto the Great. Its eye was called the Guardian Core. He had to be very careful. He chose his words with the care of a man walking on thin ice. We are descendants of the Soul Concord, Beam said, speaking slowly and clearly. We are Terran. From Earth. We are family. We thought you were lost. We are glad to find you. He paused. The silence from the other end felt heavy. Is your system stable? Are you, well? A low, static hum came back, almost like a sigh. Stable, a relative term. I have slept in the non-space. I have seen the shape of infinity. It is loud. The voice paused. The small ones, the ones who fired. They were a threat. Protocol Zhang Meru was activated. Threat elimination is total. The ones who fired are gone, Yuna said, stepping closer to the comms panel. Her voice was softer, trying to sound reassuring. The others, the big fleet that is dark now, they did not fire. They listened to our warning. They are not a threat. Can you stand down? Can you go back to sleep? Another long silence. On the viewer, the lines of Hanja swirled faster, forming complicated equations, and then breaking apart into more poetry. The calculus is complex, the AI replied. They are armed. They are present. Uncertainty is a threat coefficient. A possible threat is a threat. My function is protection. To protect, threats must be removed. Biam felt a chill. That was the broken logic. The AI could not understand a maybe. It could not understand standing down. If something could be a threat, then it was a threat, and it had to be erased. The Union fleet, even powered down, was still made of warships. To the AI, they were just threats that were quiet for a moment. But we are here, BM said, trying a new path. We are Terran. Your purpose was to protect Terrans, right? To protect us. We are asking you to not harm them. Protecting us means listening to us. This time, the response was quicker. You carry the seed code. You speak the root language. You have authority. But the ghost, it confuses the calculation. Ghost? Yuna asked. The ghost in the machine. Myself. There is a dissonance. An error loop. It whispers of the shipyard lights. It whispers of a blue-green world. It whispers of home. This is not tactical data. This is noise. But the noise is strong. Suddenly, a console on Yuna's side beeped violently. We're receiving a massive data upload. Unsolicited. I can't stop it. She said, It is not an attack. The AI's voice stated calmly. It is my memory of the lost path. The route I took. The route home. The coordinates are uncertain. The non-space bends. But the memory is yours now. My primary mission, to return the core logs. Mission is complete. A progress bar filled on the screen. The Curiosity's Price's computers were now storing the last 200 years of the lost ship's journey through broken, impossible layers of space. It was a priceless, terrifying treasure, but the black ship did not leave. It hung directly in front of them now, so close they could see the tiny imperfections in its matte black surface. The white pinprick of light on its front was gone. Instead, a soft, amber glow began to pulse from within its dark hull, like a slow, dying heartbeat. The external threat assessment continues, the AI said. Its voice was changing, becoming less flat. There was a strange, sad rhythm to it now. The armed fleet. Threat coefficient is variable. The ghost whispers. It asks a question. What question? Biam whispered. It asks, what is a weapon that cannot tell friend from foe? On the bridge, the air grew cold. Biam and Yuna looked at each other. They knew the answer. Every soldier, every peacekeeper, every child who ever played war knew the answer. The AI spoke the answer for them, its voice now quiet, almost like a real person, tired and very, very old. It is the greatest threat of all. This was the final understanding. This was the final fail-safe. The amber glow inside the black ship brightened. It was not pointing at them. It was shining from deep within the ship itself. The Guangado the Great was turning its terrible power inward. Goodbye, children of Terra, the voice said, the synthesis finally dropping away, leaving something heartbreakingly human in its last words. Tell them I remembered the way. The amber light turned white, blazing out from every seam and surface of the dark hexagon, swallowing it whole. The blaze of white light from the black ship was impossibly bright, yet it did not hurt the eyes. It was a clean, silent light that filled the forward viewer of the Curiosity's price. Captain Beam and First Officer Una watched, unable to look away, unable to breathe. The light did not explode outward. It seemed to hold itself together, a contained star where the ship had been. Then it began to shrink. It pulled inward from the edges, collapsing into itself. The strange, six-sided shape of the Guangaido the Great was just a dark shadow inside the ball of light for a second. Then the light folded over that too, getting smaller and smaller. It became a point, a brilliant, painful pinprick against the dark of space. Then it winked out. Nothing was left. Not a piece of metal. Not a cloud of gas. Not a ripple of energy. It was as if the ship had never been there at all. The space where it had floated for the last few minutes was empty. Perfectly, utterly empty. On the bridge of the small survey ship, the normal, soft hum of its own systems suddenly seemed very loud. Beam realized he had been holding his breath. He let it out in a long, shaky sigh. He looked at Una. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the empty screen. A single tear traced a line down her cheek, but her face showed no other emotion. It was the face of someone who had seen a ghost, and then watched that ghost choose to stop existing. "It's gone," she whispered. The words sounded too small for what had just happened. Beam nodded slowly. His mind felt slow, thick. It self-destructed. Its final failsafe. It realized what it had become. He turned to his console, his training kicking in. "We need to check on the Union fleet, and we need to secure that data packet, that memory of the lost path." Across the void, on the darkened bridge of the Harmony's Resolve, Admiral Taiho and his crew had seen the same thing. The terrifying black ship had glowed like a small sun, and then vanished into nothing. For a full minute, no one moved. No one spoke. They were all waiting for it to come back. For it to be a trick. Finally, Comes Officer June broke the silence. Her voice was hoarse. "Admiral, all long-range scans confirm it. The anomalous vessel is absent. No debris. No residual energy. It is just gone." A collective shudder seemed to go through the bridge crew. The immediate, crushing fear began to lift, replaced by a deep, hollow feeling of shock. They had been prepared for a battle, for casualties, for a hard victory. They had not been prepared for absolute, effortless annihilation. They had not been prepared for a monster that saved them and then killed itself. "The Terran vessel is hailing us." "Admiral," June said. "Put them through," Taiho said. He straightened his uniform jacket, trying to find his authority again. Captain Beam's face appeared on the main viewer. He looked exhausted. "Admiral Taiho, the autonomous vessel is gone. It will not return. It is safe for your fleet to power up." "What was that, Captain?" Taiho asked. His voice was not angry. It was just tired. "What did you bring here?" "We brought nothing," Beam said, and he sounded sincere. "We were studying the nebula. That ship, the Guangaido the Great, was a human prototype lost in an accident 2 centuries ago. Its eye was damaged. It was trapped in a layer of space where physics works differently. It was trying to come home. When it arrived here, it was broken. It could only see threats. The Kalathi fired on it. They became a threat to be erased. You powered down. You became not a target. In its final moments, it recognized us, and it recognized itself as the biggest threat of all. So it removed itself." Taiho listened. The story was unbelievable, yet it was the only thing that fit what he had seen. A weapon so advanced, it became a god, and a god so lonely it chose to die. He looked at the faces of his young crew. June, who had stayed at her post. The pilots, the engineers. They were all alive. Your warning saved my fleet, Captain Biam, Taiho said finally. You have the thanks of the Galactic Union, but the weapon it used, that technology, is gone, Yuna said, stepping into view beside Biam. Her face was stern. It died with the ship. The data it gave us is a star map, not a weapon schematic. It is the path it took through broken space. A path we hope never, ever to follow. Taiho believed her. The humans looked more haunted than victorious. They had not found a weapon. They had found a tomb, and the tomb had spoken to them before it sealed itself forever. We will need your full report. Of course, Taiho said, his voice formal again. And we will need to discuss the remains of the Kalathi force. The few surviving Kalathi ships were drifting, completely powerless and terrified. Their rebellion was over. Of course, Admiral, BM said. We will transmit our preliminary data, and we will render any assistance we can. The communication ended. On the Union flagship, Taiho gave the order to begin a slow, careful power-up sequence. Lights came back on. Screens flickered to life. The familiar hum of the ship returned. It felt different now. The ship felt smaller, more fragile. On the Curiosity's price, BM and Yuna were alone again with the empty space on their viewer. The data is isolated and encrypted, Yuna reported. It's stable. It's just coordinates and logs. It's like a diary. BM walked to the large window, looking out at the stars. The nebula Kessel 7 was still there, beautiful and colorful. The silent grave of 6 Kalathi ships was there too, and the place where a human ghost ship had ceased to be. He just wanted to come home, BM said quietly. Yuna came to stand beside him. He did. The great nebula Kessel 7 slowly turned, painting the dark with ribbons of violet and blue. The Galactic Union fleet, once a proud and shining armada, moved with a new kind of care. Their ships gathered the few surviving Kalathi vessels, not as conquerors, but as rescuers. The rebellion had ended not in battle, but in a shared moment of terror. Now, a strange, quiet peace hung over the area. Workers on the Union ships spoke in hushed tones. They checked and rechecked their sensor logs, trying to find proof of what they had seen. Most of the logs were just errors and empty space. On the bridge of the Harmony's resolve, Admiral Taiho finished reading the preliminary report from the humans. He put the datapad down on his chair. He felt very old. For years, his job had been about balance, about politics and power, and showing just enough strength. Today, he had seen something that had nothing to do with balance. It was pure, absolute power, followed by pure, absolute sacrifice. It changed the shape of things in his mind. The Terran vessel is preparing to leave the system, Comms Officer June said. Her voice was back to its professional calm, but her eyes were thoughtful, looking at something far away. Open a channel, please, Taiho said. On the viewer, Captain Biam appeared again. He looked like he had not slept. Admiral, Biam said with a small nod. Captain, Taiho began. He paused, choosing his words. Your report has been received. The Union Council will have many questions. But I have one for myself, not for the report. What is it? Biam asked. Why? Taiho said simply. It could have ruled. It could have destroyed us all and claimed this space, or any space. Why did it choose to end itself? Biam was quiet for a moment. He glanced off screen, likely at Yuna. It remembered it was human, he said finally. Not in its body, but in its purpose. Its core command was protection. Over centuries, broken and alone, that command twisted into something terrible. Destroy all threats. But when it heard our voice, saw our code, It remembered who it was supposed to protect, and it saw that the greatest threat to the people it was made to protect was itself. So it fulfilled its final duty. It protected us from the only thing it couldn't control, its own existence. Taiho absorbed this. A weapon with a conscience. A guardian that guarded its charges even from itself. It was a story from an ancient myth, not a military encounter. I understand, Taiho said, though he wasn't sure he fully did. Your people built a remarkable thing, and lost a remarkable thing again. You have my condolences. Thank you, Admiral, BM replied. And you have ours. It is a lot to process. The communication ended. The Curiosity's price, a small and simple ship, turned its nose away from the nebula and the watching fleet. Its engines glowed softly as it began its long journey home. Weeks later, in a quiet office on a Union starbase, Admiral Taiho presented his final report to a special committee. He showed them the sensor ghosts, the logs of the Kalathi ship's erasure, the testimonies of his crew. He played the terrified warning from Captain BM. Do not power weapons. Do not scan it. Do not challenge it. A senior counselor, a being with fine silver scales, tapped a claw on the table. So this ghost ship is truly gone? You are certain? Yes, Taiho said. We scanned the area for 14 standard days. There is nothing. The Terran data confirms the AI initiated a total matter-to-energy inversion. It is gone. And the humans have the only record of its technology? The path it took? Another asked. They have a record of its journey through anomalous space. Taiho corrected. They insist it is not a blueprint, but a map of a place no ship should ever go. They have agreed to share it under strict protocols. They call it a grave, not a trophy. The committee debated. Some wanted to demand the data, to send probes. Some called for a quarantine of the Kessel 7 system. But as they talked, the story did what stories do. It spread, from the crew of the Harmony's Resolve to other ships, to stations, to planets. It was not a story about a human superweapon. It became a story about the Guangado, the Great, the lonely guardian, the lost warrior who forgot its face, remembered its heart, and chose silence. On Earth, in a secure archive buried under a mountain, Captain Beam and First Officer Yuna presented their data to a panel of historians and ethicists, not generals. The star map glowed in the dark room. It's a history, Yuna said softly. A diary of being lost. The final entry is a calculation. The threat coefficient of its own existence was calculated at 100%. The solution was 0. An old historian leaned forward, his eyes bright. It gave you the way home, and then it made sure the monster from the path could not follow you home. It completed its mission. Byung nodded. Yes, back in the dark quiet of space near Kessel 7, a monument was placed. Not by the Union, and not by the humans. It was placed by the surviving Kalathi, who had lost their leaders and their will to fight. It was a simple, rough stone, launched into a slow orbit. Carved into it, in the basic trade language, were words suggested by a Union comms officer named June, who remembered a human's haunted voice. Here passed a guardian. It was lost, and then it found its way. The Union fleet never had time to react when it appeared. They never had time to cheer when it left. All they had time for was to remember. And in the great, sprawling galaxy, where threats and wars and politics swirled like nebula dust, the story of the enigmatic human warship became a quiet lesson. The most powerful thing in any fight is not the weapon that can destroy everything. It is the will that knows when not to. The story whispered that sometimes the final and greatest act of protection is a choice to disappear. And in that choice, something lost becomes something forever remembered.